of last year.
Good, good, excited. The title of the session is Career Transitioning, but we're going to be adapting it from your book, How to Make Your PhD Work. All right. And it's all about PhD, postdoc, career transitioning, whether postdoc is really something that is appropriate for people. I've had people reach out to me and say, well, I want to do postdoc, people from here, people from outside of the country. And I can see that they don't know whether it's something that they should pursue. So based on that, how would you describe the PhD job markets now?
Yeah, the job markets for PhDs is vast. And the reason it's so large is that there's a lot of opportunities outside of just the typical PhD jobs that people were getting. Back in the 90s and 2000s, a lot of people thought that PhDs needed to become professors. And there's been a lot more PhDs graduating every year. And because of this surplus, they have found different careers. So within the last 20 years, many PhDs have found their ways into government, finance, industry, and nonprofits. And those people have kind of set the groundwork for PhDs in those careers. So now there are many different paths that a PhD can take, and it's not an immediate fit. A lot of PhDs need to transition out of the academic mind and get into the mindset of their new environment, of industry, and understand what's motivating different things. So it can be really challenging for a lot of people, and it's not an immediate transition. So it's challenging, but the careers are there. So there are careers, but not the easiest transition.
Wow, wow. It's very important that we know the transition story is very important, and how people experience different things. And you just said that it's very difficult to move out of the academic mindset. And in my own opinion, one of the reasons why I think it's very difficult is because people tend to place the academic position over every other position. And it feels like if you go for any of these other positions, you're not that good, in quotes.
Yeah.
What was that your experience when you were getting your PhD, or did something that was very different?
Yeah. So this is to look at. This is something I've thought about quite a bit. I think there's a number of reasons for the reason why that is, but I definitely noticed that people wanted to be going from academics into their professor job because that was the definition of success for them. But the thing is that when you're in a PhD, you're surrounded by an environment that is telling you that success is to be a professor, and your advisor is a professor. So the person you're looking up to is in this position that you think is what you need to get. And you're not really exposed to anything else. So it's kind of like your immediate environment is totally influencing you. So, I think that's why that happens. It sort of cultivates its own energy, and it sort of is a self-fulfilling prophecy. But there's a lot of careers out there. I just don't think a lot of people are exposed to them,
Interesting. You said something now that is very interesting. The fact that when we were all doing our PhD, we have an advisor that is actually the PI, and it feels like the most motivating thing is to try to become your PI, which is becoming an advisor and also becoming a professor too. But then there's something that was explained in your book, How to Make Your PhD Work. The fact that even though that's a natural thing to do, but then a lot of advisors don't have the skills to help the PhDs to move in that direction. And it becomes like, oh, this is what you should do, but then how do I get there?
Yeah. Yeah. Even so, you mean so even to get into a professor job, sometimes it's challenging as well.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in terms of, yeah, I mean, it's really, really challenging to become a professor. Most of the times, the professors nowadays, the principal, the PIs, like we're talking about, the advisors, they navigated the environment of their careers at a very different time than we are navigating, or the people now graduating. And so because of that, they're in a totally different landscape, job market, and the level of competition of PhDs has only increased. There's only more PhDs graduating every year. So there's like 45,000 science and engineering PhDs graduating every year, and all of them, are trying to get jobs. And so if all those people are graduating, the professors and the PIs they're not really always coaching PhDs to become professors. So, to become PIs. So the PhDs do have to figure out a lot by themselves, especially to stand out in today's job market, because it is super competitive. There's a lot of PhDs that go on to postdocs, and they're hanging out, waiting for that one moment to get that Nature paper or Cell paper, and then they're hoping to apply for those really competitive jobs. And we're just talking about some of the smartest people, right? And competing against the smartest people can be pretty challenging.
Yes.
Or the most driven. Not always, I guess. Don't have to be the smartest, but the most driven for sure.
Wow, excellent. This is a very good conversation. I also like the fact that you talked about different factors that people should consider when they start their PhD. All right. So when you're applying to get a PhD, there are 3 things you're supposed to think about. What are these 3 things? And can you give us a summary of that?
Yeah. So it's one of the chapters in my book. So I go into the advisor. There it is, and then the advisor, the environment, and the project, and so I decided to create this diagnostics test that would help PhDs figure out how their PhD was going. And in that test, they can assess each component of their PhD and decide if it's like actually, being successful. And so everything can be boiled down into 3 components: your advisor, your project, and your environment. If you have a strong advisor, then your advisor is someone who is nurturing, caring, concerned about your development, and who's motivated, and who's also going to be there present in the labs or in the offices. And then the project is a really good project is going to be a project that you're excited about, you can sink your teeth into, you can really work on. You can, the project's also new in the field. It's not going to be something that's not established or something that's just been established for a long time. And so it's like a project people are interested in. That's always nice. And then there's the environment. And I think some people have said that in PhD labs, if the advisor is typically putting a lot of pressure on things, the PhDs can get really competitive. And when they become competitive, it can become toxic. And, there can be some challenging environments to navigate. So, usually you can see how things are going based on those 3 criteria. So when people are picking PhD programs, though, the single number 1 thing is the advisor, because the advisor you can have a good relationship with an advisor. And like that's the advice that I like. That's the sort of conclusion that I had with all of the interviews from my book is if you can have a good advisor, but if they're not a good advisor, then you're going to have a really challenging PhD, because yeah, it's really challenging. I talked to a lot of people while interviewing for the book, and people who had a really challenging relationship with their advisor were just not very happy. And you can't, if you're unhappy all the time, you can't do great research. You can't be positive with your lab mates and stuff. So but by contrast, people who had good relationships with their advisors, those were the people that went on to talk about their PhD in a positive way, and went on more transition more easily out of those programs as well. So.
Wow, excellent, excellent. So the most important factor is the advisor, not the project, not the environment.
Yes.
That is clear.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's even I talked to a couple of PhDs who said that they picked their PhD programs based on the project, and they wish they had put more decision factor, like more weight on the relationship with the advisor, because they really needed that, so it really is the most important thing.
Wow, I hope somebody's hearing this. I did not know this when I started my PhD. And of course, I mean, when you're thinking about a PhD, the first thing you want to think about is the fact that you want to make sure there's funding for the project. And also, the start is making sure that what the person is doing is actually aligning with what your interests are. That's what they told us to start from. But then now we are not saying, well, at the end of the day, it's going to be about who the advisor is and how they relate with you. But then the challenge is, how can somebody get to know that before the application? And for somebody who is an international student who probably just seen the picture of the advisor on the internet, how do you get to know who the person is?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I don't think it's that easy. You probably have to go by recommendations, and just hope that it's going to be okay, because it probably is not that easy to figure out. Yeah, unfortunately.
Wow. Interesting. Something that you said that you did, which I also read in your book, How to Make Your PhD Work, is the fact that you talked to a lot of PhDs and they talked about their transition stories. How was the experience approaching the PhDs to talk about their experience? Was everybody open to share about their experience, or was it very difficult for them to be vulnerable?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I actually was surprised by how many people responded that they would talk about their PhD. And there were almost no one, actually almost everyone that I reached out to was willing to talk about their PhD. Excuse me. And then, yeah, so I was super surprised. I got a lot of good feedback on that. And they were very, very supportive. And some of the stories that I heard were really challenging stories. Some stories did not make it into the book. And so some people's stories, some people did not want their story in the book afterwards. But at the end of the day, like, I got quite a few, and I was able to choose which stories went in and which ones were more enlightening. And there's actually a lot of international stories in the book. So there's stories of people from China, Israel, Italy, Greece, and India in the book. And so those different perspectives of coming to America and experiencing the juxtaposition between their culture and the American culture, and how the research labs are here, is an interesting part of the story that I was really happy to incorporate, because it just really was enlightening to me. And it was absolute pleasure to talk to everyone that contributed to the book. It was a really, really rewarding experience that I didn't anticipate to feel that way. You know, I didn't know how important those conversations were. People would thank me after the conversations because they actually felt like they felt unburdened, like they were able to get something off their chest about their story. And so it was awesome. I mean, it was like, it was a little bit of therapy, you know, like for everybody.
Yes, that's what I was hoping to hear. It was therapy for them also. The experiences were very good. One of those experiences was somebody from India saying the fact that, well, when you're from India, there are two major courses that you're expected to take. Either you become an engineer or you become a doctor. And I was surprised that reading law is not part of it. And I'm gonna ask one of my Indian friends, and or if you want to comment on that, you can also comment on that. So because coming from Africa, it's three major courses that your parents will probably think you should pick from. All right, engineering, all right, medicine, and law. But for some reason, in the case of the story that I read from India, the person was saying, well, law is not even part of it. It's just two. You have to pick from two. Really?
Yeah, I'm not sure why that was. Now that you say that, I'm surprised they didn't say law. Yeah, I suppose it could have been that family, you know, like her family values, like maybe she had some doctors in her family. But yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Maybe I think law is valued there. But yeah, kind of that is interesting.
Yeah, I'll leave you off the hook with that. I'll ask my Indian friends about that, and they'll tell me what they feel about that.
Yeah, let me know what they say. I'm curious. I'm also I'll ask mine as well. But yeah, it's funny.
Good. Thank you so much. This is really going well. We started by saying, well, PhD is very important. We'll be talking about PhD. But then if somebody is there and they're thinking, is PhD for me? During my career transition, what are the things that they're supposed to consider for them to know that PhD will help them during their career transition, or they're just supposed to do something else to get an MBA or something? What would you, if somebody calls you and based on your book and they're asking you, well, I'm trying to see if PhD is right for me, how would you advise them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, so I would go through, this has actually happened to me. I've talked to people and coached them on whether they should go for a PhD. And I usually ask them, you know, I mean, why they want to do it. And sometimes the answer is they want to go deeper into science. They want to make an impact in science. They want to know more than what they learned in their, you know, in their undergrad courses. And I think those are all good reasons. But I would also encourage them to find out what careers they might be interested in to go into. So that's what I typically do. I ask them, like, you know, what courses are they interested in? What courses do they want to or sorry, what careers are they interested in? What careers they might go into with the PhD? So yeah, it's I don't really caution them against it. I do tell them that they need to be focused in order to be successful, and I do let them know that it's going to be a challenging transition, so they need to be proactive for their career. But I don't discourage people from getting a PhD. I think for me, it was some of the most fun 5 years of that I've ever experienced. And I met some of the most, I mean, amazing people and was around some of the most amazing information, excitement and research. And it afforded me so many opportunities. So I think it's amazing. The job market is always going to be challenging. But if you get a PhD, you do get access to some really, really cool careers. And you become a fast learner. And like, I know that I can learn anything because I've been challenged enough to to take so many courses. Like, I think that's what us PhDs do. We just like, we become extremely good at like learning things fast.
Good, good. You have PhD, figure it out, that kind of a thing.
Yeah. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I also like that in your book, How to Make Your PhD Work. You mentioned the transferable skills that PhD should supposed to have. I like that a lot. What I think is also important we talk about is the fact that choosing the right advisor is very important. But then, how does the choice of advisor impact the career path that the person takes eventually?
Yeah. The choice is going to impact it a lot, but it's not the single most important factor. Typically, it's all on the individual. If you're graduating from your PhD and you eventually want to go into a specific career, you can take actions towards that career. And many people think that, yeah, the advisor might tell you not to, they might encourage you to stay in academics because they want to have some of their graduates in academics to have more opportunities for collaboration. And that can be there can be a lot of pressure. I mean, I think, right, in academics, there's a lot of pressure on PhDs to stay in academics. It can be, like I said, a self-fulfilling prophecy, a very just a very tight circle of people just doing the same things and not introducing new ideas. So yeah, I would encourage that person to just explore on their own. I think you can do pretty much whatever you want to do. And the best advice I've ever gotten was to actually by Robert Langer. He's one of the most published and has the most patents of any living engineer, and it might be any engineer of all time. And he's a professor at MIT, and he's spun off 35 companies. He has lab reunions of like hundreds of PhDs, and I got to meet him when I was at NYU for my postdoc. And he just said that, change your environment. If you change your environment, you change a lot about what you're surrounded with and who you're surrounded with. And I just really appreciated that because he was a chemical engineer and he went into biomedical engineering and he became the most influential PhD of the modern century. He's responsible for self-eluting stents that release drugs into the to take away clots in the bloodstream. So anyway, like just saying, like, change your environment. As a PhD, if you're surrounded by an advisor telling you one thing, go listen to something else. Go listen to this podcast.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. You mentioned something that is very interesting now. Change of environment. I grew up in Nigeria. I came here to get my master's and I get my PhD. I understand what change of environment is all about, of course. But then, for somebody who probably don't understand that, and somebody who is considering study abroad, I've had part of the story in your book is how somebody did PhD in one country and said, well, I want to do postdoc in another country, and those kind of things. So do you think that's a good idea to go abroad to study? And is this something that you recommend?
Yeah, yes. So the answer is yes. I think studying in different countries is always a good idea unless it's like not a safe scenario. However, yeah, if it's a good environment that you're going into, it's always a good idea to go in and try something new. I do think that things come at a cost. Let's say you decided to spend 2 years in a research lab in Germany and you don't speak the language, and you have to learn the language as well as do research and be productive for 2 years or whatever that is. You're the goal, you should consider the goal before doing something like that.
Mm-hmm.
If you think it's a part of your career trajectory and you need that experience, then do it.
Mm-hmm.
If you just want the cultural experience, I would say do it as well. But if you're wondering if it's going to give you a higher salary later on in life, then maybe it's not, it might not, but it might define your life. I think sometimes spending time in different countries it offers you perspective into how different people live, and you're more in touch with the human condition and sort of like the global understanding of how the world works. But yeah,
Wow.
right. I mean, yeah, I got to live in Ireland during my PhD, and it's an English-speaking country. However, even just the slight juxtaposition, the slight changes in things, gave me an insight into how other people live, and
Mm-hmm.
that opened up a lot of curiosity about culture for me, and gave me a lot more. But I would just say, yeah, like anyone considering something, it's going to be mostly a net positive unless you have a challenging experience. But
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Very interesting. One of the things that I also find interesting in your book, How to Make Your PhD Work, is the fact that one of the terrifying things that can happen to someone that is on the track to become a professor, tenure track professor, is the denial of the actual application. And in a couple of the stories that I read in your book, that actually happened, in which case the individuals had to change the lab and things like that. So do you have an experience on that? And what is your advice for somebody who is scared of that kind of situation?
Anyone who's scared of that is justified to be scared. Certainty is always, uncertainty is scary, but I would combat them and just let them know that the entire job market lacks certainty, unless you are in a very particular career. And the tenure track professor jobs, they do exist, but those are jobs, and you can be laid off, you can be let go, they can reestablish budgets and let people go. There's really nothing certain. So the only certainty that you have truly is sort of your understanding of yourself, and the belief that you can navigate the situation, and just being proactive towards the next step. Like I've been through an industry layoff before, so in pharma, there's a lot of times where business can change, and the strategies and overall focuses of a company can change where they are putting the money. And once that happens, people are obviously cut. And it's just a fact of business. I mean, it's in America, and with capitalism,
Mm-hmm.
the money is really important for like what direction things are headed. So, unfortunately, if you're catching the wrong tailwind of a bad direction, you might be getting cut. So I would just say that, like, look, there's no such thing as certainty. The tenure track professor job is great, but they're really few and far between. And then I would also combat that if you're a tenure track professor, that's a great job, and obviously, kudos for having job security. But some of those people might wish for something else, So like, there's no such thing as a perfect job. So.
Good. Thank you so much. In your book, How to Make Your PhD Work, you compared industry and academia. There was a couple of paragraphs on that and things like that. So for people who are trying to figure out whether industry is for them or academia is for them, what's the line of action that you would recommend?
Yeah, so I really like this part of the book, because I think self-exploration is really exciting. And let me tell you what I mean by that. So tell the audience what I mean by that. So Yeah, self-exploration is just your understanding of your own personal skills, and everyone has a certain number of skills that are intrinsic to them. And albeit they are either really good at listening or really good at talking or really good at problem solving or, you know, really good at marketing, things like this, or really good with numbers. So I think self-exploration, taking like a Myers-Briggs test or taking a test that is particular to personality, as well as taking a science careers test. So it's called My IDP, My Individual Development Plan. So the science careers has this, and I can probably add the link, but it's in the book. But I walk through like a self-exploration of taking the Myers-Briggs, finding out about your personality, if you're introverted or extroverted, and walking through and finding out, you know, what careers you might have an affinity for. And there's a test you can take that tells you which careers you might have an affinity for, and that's on this My IDP if you type that into Google. But yeah, just in determining what, if industry or academics is right for you. You know, I think some PhDs were more idealistic, you know, we're more altruistic. We want to change the world, we want to, you know, inspire people, we want to, like, you know, motivate others. And I think even though that might work best in the classroom, you can find those skills are actually really good for building teams in industry. So like for startups or new collaborations, like I love to mentor students, and so now in industry, I use those skills to mentor other medical writers, and I use my skills of, you know, team building or inspiring others to help connect people at work and make a more warm and inviting work environment. So I think the skills, no matter who you are, your skills can translate to industry or academics. And then, you know, finding exactly what career is best for you, there's a lot of criteria to consider. How much you want to make in money wise. You know, do you want to talk during your job? Do you want to work remote? So many new factors now. There's so many different things that you can do. It's pretty wild.
Wow, interesting. Thank you for sharing that so much. I really appreciate that. I think I read in a part of your book, you said, or someone sharing said, the more I headed away from academics, the less I began to look back at the environment. Were you the person that said that, or another person from your book?
I don't think I said that, but that's a really beautiful statement, right?
Yeah. So like, because it's like moving straight and not looking back. Oh.
Yeah.
What do you have any take on that?
Yeah, I think there's a famous expression where people say, there's no reason to look back because I'm not going that way. And I think that is like a true belief in yourself, you know? And I would say, yeah, I love that mindset, you know, of that positivity, that they're forging ahead, trailblazing their career. I think there's a lot of excitement in that mindset. Because I think as PhDs, we can be full of, you know, there can be regret, there can be misunderstanding, but the thing about the PhD is it's its own thing. It's a world in and of itself, and you are not that world. Like anytime you go into something, you're going to pass through it, and you're going to make your impact that you can, and then you're going to leave it, and that's that. So I think, yeah, like going in the right direction and just forging ahead. There's endless things to be curious about in this world, and I think you know, now with everyone having a personal computer that can run its own ChatGPT or Llama 3, I think there's plenty to be curious about and to learn. There's a lot going on.
Yes, yes, you're very right about that. Still talking about career path, I think at the end of the day, when somebody has chosen a career path, they want to really know if that's what they should continue to do, or they need to make a career transition. And in a working environment, in your own experience beyond PhD, what are the things to look out for you to be able to say, well, I think I'm in the right environment? What are the red flags? What are the green flags that you want to see? What are the landmarks that you want to say, well, I think I'm in the right place, or I think I'm in the wrong place? What would you say about that?
Yeah, that's a really beautiful question, right? Like that's a really really wonderful way to think about it. I think being excited when you wake up is a really important part of finding a job that you're interested in. And what makes someone wake up for one person might be different for, what makes you excited to look at versus me might be different. But we both get out of bed and we're both excited, then we both have good jobs. But for someone who is, that I think that is like probably the number one thing is if you wake up excited for work, and that's really great. And if you talk about it like in a good way, and your friends tell you that you seem happy, I would think that's a nice litmus test. Or if you feel like you have peace. Yeah, I mean, I think there's always going to be stress, with money or jobs or promotions and security and all these things going on. But there's everything's always moving forward, and and the American economy is always moving forward. Things are always happening, especially in science and engineering. So, yeah, so I think there's a lot of greens, but as far as red flags though to look for, yeah, not getting out of bed and just dreading going to the office, not feeling like you have a good understanding. I think one of the most important things, right, when you come out of a PhD, is your first manager. But at the same time, the reason I say that is because the transition can be so difficult. But you have to do that your own work. You can't rely just on your manager to help you transition into a job. So, yeah, just I guess see how you feel. I guess that's my takeaway for that.
So go with the gut feeling, go with the emotions and things like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. In your book, How to Make Your PhD Work, another thing you mentioned there is the hidden job market. The fact that we talked about it, we described the job market at the beginning of the session today, but then that's what we can see. What about the things that we cannot see? How can somebody access the job market that is not easily available to people?
Yeah, it almost sounds like a mystery, right? The hidden
Yes.
job. Yeah. Well, the hidden job market that's just a way to say. Well, actually, it's quite interesting. So companies will post jobs, and sometimes they'll actually post jobs that they're not hiring for, just to confuse their competition. And they can even just collect resumes for jobs that they don't even want to hire for. So there's a lot of smoke and mirrors with jobs. And yeah, so how do you access the real job market of the hidden job, or the hidden job market? And that's really through connections. I think that's where you can really find jobs that are really needed. Like if a company's hiring your skill set, that's definitely the best way to do things, to talk to people and find out what jobs are available.
Wow,
So yeah.
excellent.
Yeah.
And that makes me think about networking. Networking is very important. And my next session my next podcast session is most likely going to be on networking. I have a guest. We're going to talk about networking because I think it's very important. And I think there's some places in your book, How to Make Your PhD Work. You also mentioned networking there.
Yeah.
And what's your best advice on networking? How do you approach networking?
Yeah. So four words. Your network is your net worth. So no, I always like that. But in truth, your network is your net worth. So in terms of starting to network, just going out and being places can be a way to put yourself in the environments that you need to be in. So again, change your environment. You can't network from your apartment or your house. So you got to go to these events. And then sometimes like you might be wondering like when you're immediately graduated, it might be hard to know what you're looking for. But the more people you talk to, the more well-defined that would be. So I would just say go out and talk to people, be friendly, be yourself. Don't have an agenda. I mean, everyone knows you probably need a job, that's just like why you're there. So you don't have to be insecure about that, Just know your value, know that you have something to offer, know what you're good at. Be ready to talk about it, if you want to talk about your stuff. But if you're at an industry networking event, don't go into the specifics of your PhD thesis. Try to have some fun and talk about like things that might be applicable to industry. So talk about like hitting deadlines and working with teams and working with other people and motivating them, and and some of the projects you delivered on and some cool experiences, and maybe the travel that you did, and like maybe it might be that someone traveled to the same place and that's why you wind up getting a job.
Yeah.
So just that you never know what conversation, right?
Yes. I mean, we tend to like go into the science, and scientists are really bad at this because you just we go to networking event, you see talking about the science and the data and how bad the data is, and you try to, it's like you're digging the person to the hole and the person is going down, but you keep talking anyways because you're a scientist. But
Yeah.
then now talking about something that is more interesting, where you come from, like time management, deadlines, things that you just mentioned, it's something that is very important. And most of the networking feedback or opportunities that I've gotten are not the ones that I came really to out like somebody who needs a job, because that's just scary for people, right? If you need
Yeah.
something from me and I feel you're too needy, then most likely people want to move back a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
actually networking is kind of like sales. And the worst salespeople are people that are what, in your face, right? Like they tell you to buy something. But the best thing you can do in sales is actually ask other people what they are looking for and what they need and find out more about them. So I always say like people who are curious are people who are interested are interesting people. So just showing interest, and then over time they might be like, man, this person asked me like 10 questions. People love talking, right? I mean, about their own world and having someone that listens. So be a good listener, ask a lot of questions, and maybe the opening of a job might be there and right in front of your eye, and you might be able to just say, actually, what you're looking for is actually a lot of these skills. I actually have these skills, and would you be open to me sending your resume or sending me that job opening? And if the conversation went well, sure, they might say yes. So
Yes. It's very important. I like what you said just now. Interested people are very interesting. I mean, because you know that then you're interested in what you're saying and you find them very interesting. You wanna connect with them. You wanna continue to have conversation with them because they seems to be very excited about what you're saying, and that's very important. Something that I can quickly link to that is LinkedIn. All right. So based on your experience working at different jobs, what would you recommend the best way to approach LinkedIn, and how can you use that for job search or networking and things like that?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is great. It's a great way to find people who are in fields that you want to be in. So I would first use your network from your university that you went to, uh, and then look that up and find people who went to the jobs you wanted to go to that are alumni of the same university, and then ask them if they would have a 15-minute conversation with you. I have a template for a LinkedIn cold message in my book, but and how to make a PhD work. But yeah, so I would recommend using that informational interview template and trying to have a 15-minute call with them. And if you send out 10 messages on LinkedIn, you're probably going to get one or two meetings, or maybe even more, like 5, but at the very least 1 or 2. And sending a message to someone is not very hard to do. I mean, if you think about, it's just typing a message and sending it. The hardest part is maybe the rejection, you know. So if you can get over that, then I just say go for it. So, but yeah, so just just send out those messages, show interest, tell people, find something you're interested in about their career, about their LinkedIn page, and just say like, wow, like Kaluka, you have this podcast, like this is really cool. I'd love to learn more about what you're doing, and can I have 15 minutes of your time? And you'd be like, well, yeah, sure, that sounds great. So
Good. I also want to quickly say that people are very busy, right? You're messaging people. There are other people that are also messaging them. This is not something that they have to do. It's not part of their job description, so they have to decide whether they want to respond or not.
yeah.
I actually sent a message to someone, and I ran into them at a conference.
Mm.
And at this point, they were just like, "Oh, now we can talk because we met in person already. So why not have the conversation and things like that?" And also just know that it's not good to take it personal, because it's just live. Not everybody's gonna respond to your message because they don't want to, or because they are busy and they're thinking of responding, but then they've not getting to that point. They have other things that they felt is probably more urgent to deal with than somebody who just want to have a chat. So just be open-minded like that. It's very important. The last question I want to ask you, in your book, How to Make the PhD Work, you talked about startups. You engaged in startups and things like that, and how you went back to the industry. What are the lessons you learned from being involved with startup? And if somebody's thinking about that, being involved in that, either directly or indirectly, what would you say to the person?
Yeah, so if someone wants to go into startups, that's great, and they should do that. I wound up going back into industry. So yeah, my perspective is that startups offer a lot of opportunity to touch a lot of different parts of a company. And if you're coming from a PhD, I think it can be a great starting point, because in a PhD, you're used to doing a lot of different things, probably managing a budget, ordering the supplies, running the experiments, designing them, analyzing the results, mentoring students, writing the papers, sending in the publications, doing the reviews. There's a lot of things you're doing. And in a startup, that kind of energy is going to serve you very well, and people are going to look to you very highly because you're a self-starter. So I would say, yeah, a startup is a good opportunity, because your skills as a PhD transfer very well, like your innate skills, and it also offers you the opportunity to see what parts of industry that you like. Yeah, so that I'd say that's the biggest thing, is that yeah, just like by going into a startup, if you're not sure of exactly what you want to do later on, you can have more flexibility in a startup to explore a lot of different parts of a company. And then you're also taking a little bit of risk and maybe getting some equity or reward for that experience. So I think it can be, pretty rewarding overall.
Wow, wow, excellent. Especially if the company eventually become big, because you're probably part of the shareholders already,
Yeah.
and things like that. It could be a very big success at the end of the day. And most, like you said in your book, how to make your PhD work. One of the things that you stated clearly that I really appreciated is the fact that the big companies, they're not really interested in doing too much of research by themselves. That's why they hope to buy a startup that is doing well. And that makes a lot of sense because I was like, there's still a level of risk when they buy the startups, but it makes sense for them to say, well, instead of setting up a lab, hiring multiple scientists and having that side of business, we can just go to conferences, hear different startups share their data, and hire people that are professionals who are going to say, well, I think you guys should buy this company. And that's what companies do. And we see that on LinkedIn, and you just hear, well, this company is buying this company, and that's it. And both people are happy in that kind of situation. So I think it could be a very big win if it's a nice fit and the company becomes really successful at some point.
Yeah, it's a huge win. Huge win.
Now we're moving to the head. Is there anything you want to tell our viewers as we wrap up? You want to talk about your book a little bit and where they can get it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the book is, when I wrote it, I really intended to tell the story that was different than had existed out there. And what I mean by that is a lot of people had been talking about PhDs as a very negative experience. And I think that we can choose how we see our PhD. And I think that I don't think going into academics is a really bad thing. I don't think PhDs are sold anything. I just think it's an economics problem. I think people are trying to find more careers. I think there's more information on the internet. People are more in the know about things. So more people are going for PhDs. It's not something, there's no like enemy here. It's just a problem that is going to be solved as more PhDs find their way into other careers. So that's why in the book, I chose to tell the story of both academics and industry and paint them in the right light. I have good stories of academics and good stories of industry, challenging stories of both. I talk about both the trials and the tribulations of both. And then I talk about my own key learnings of how I navigated industry, how I navigated academics, interviews and things like that, and then how other people did it as well. So there's a lot of stories. I was surrounded with a lot of content, and yeah, if people are interested in getting the book, it's available on Amazon. And if you're looking for a link, you can go to phdsource.com. That's my website that I started. It's been running for about 6 years now, but yeah, phdsource.com, and the book is available there, as well as the PhD Planner. The PhD Planner is a daily and weekly guide for 2024 to 2025, and it includes a lot of really cool worksheets to work through for assessing your career and walking through a lot of different things. So yeah, phdsource.com, and then it's all on Amazon.
Good. Thank you so much for being here. In your busy schedule, you were able to say yes to me. You didn't have to to come here and talk to a black guy from Nigeria but with a terrible accent. Thank you so much.
Totally, it's a pleasure. And I think it's something I always wanted to do, and I really admire what you're doing. And I'm glad we met through PhD, and we'll just keep grinding on our careers, and we'll accomplish our goals, man. So I really appreciate everything, and and I hope your audience enjoyed it. And they can reach out on LinkedIn. I'm at, my name is available on here as well. So
good. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. Thank you, our viewers. Until next time. Bye. Thank you so much.
bye.